And now we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. One of the things that I say that people should definitely do is document. And I know you tell your clients that too.
Thing. You know, it's a good place to start, because I think it is, if it's the only do you do, you're in good shape. And I don't just use this document recommendation just in marriages and close relationships and divorces. I make it a strong suggestion in workplace issues, in other kinds of disputes you may be having, sometimes even in family issues. And it's interesting, my motivation for documentation, as you can imagine, it's to substantiate a legal argument, yes. But it's also to help with your sanity. Because sometimes people are like, no, maybe that didn't happen. I'm like, no, sweetie, in your journal on January 5th, it happened. You wrote it down. They're like, oh, yeah. So, the narcissistic relationships are absolutely impacted by euphoric recall. People strangely are able to remember the good stuff about these really bad relationships. The documentation sometimes becomes a place where you can say, yeah, no, this isn't healthy.
Well, it's that, and I would add to that the reason, another really good reason to document is that narcissists are pathological liars. So you will catch them in lies if you document. And I've won entire cases on people's notes. So, and there's really no limit to how detailed you can be. It's really kind of just how meticulous you want to be, because if they're late for picking up the kids, if they're late for a payment on something, if they made a snide remark, if they wrote an email that was not reflective of a conversation and they tried to pawn it off as a conversation that you had, something like that, just any little thing that just seems off to you, just take note of it. Because, when you ask the question, how is he or she getting away with this, which you're going to ask that, and I always say there's no like divorce fairies that come out and stop people from doing things. So, they won't get away with it if you end up in front of the judge and you have the proper documentation.
It is I always say to people, want to know how you know you're being gaslighted or in a relationship with a narcissist? I'll tell you. In arguments, you put text messages in front of them, you feel compelled to record conversations, and you feel the need to write long novels of emails to them to explain your feelings. You're doing that because you're not being heard, and because you are being gaslighted so much that you have to show them this proof. This is taking this to another level, and for a different reason. Again, it's to provide that substantiation, and it's not just about writing things down, it's about saving everything. You must save every text message. You must save every voicemail. You must save every email. Nothing can go. You're going to start to feel like a hoarder before this is done, but you're going to have to do it, because sometimes it's just that one message. And one thing I do also strongly encourage people to do, print it all out. And there's actually apps out there that allow you to download all your text messages and print them all out. Create a printout, because in case something blows up with your phone or your email server or something, then at least you have the hard evidence. It's got to have dates, times, all of that. Print it all out. You might even want to get into like a once-a-month cycle where you print everything out and put it someplace safe.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to just make a comment on what you just said. Number one is, for your own sake too, remember that every text and every email and every writing is a potential trial exhibit. So if you don't want to see it again,
thank you.
Do not write it.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it will, if you don't want to see it again at a very inopportune time, meaning like in front of the judge, where you're now having to explain and defend yourself, don't write it. Don't send it.
But this becomes a great point of leverage, because I'll tell you, nothing incenses a narcissist more than when you're not giving them equally long, bizarre text, like those long text messages that require you to click again to see the whole thing.
Right.
So what happens is, if you give brief responses like, okay, let's talk later, they're going to just give you verbal diarrhea, which is great. So it's just, you get two for the price of one. Yeah. You don't engage and put your stuff down where you don't want it to be, and you get them just sort of putting it all out there, which you now have for later. So that's good.
And the other point I wanted to make about what you said was, you feel this need to show them and defend it, prove to them that what they said was wrong, whatever. Don't do that.
No, I agree. Yep.
Don't do that. That's your leverage. Don't resist the urge to want to do that in the moment and prove to them. So listen, people, you're dealing with narcissists. Narcissists are not going to accept constructive feedback
Nope.
and make changes to their behavior based on on your feedback and reflect on it and all of that stuff. It's not happening. So you can show them a text message that directly counteracts exactly what they just said, proves that they're lying, and somehow they will manipulate that away that it's not a lie. So, and even if it makes no sense whatsoever, I mean, sometimes they say things that make no sense whatsoever. But just resist that urge to want to show them the leverage. That would be a don't.
Yes.
You know, create your leverage. Do that, but don't give it away too early.
Right. And it's a classic. It's a poker game. You would not ever sit in a casino and say, or a card game and say, "Look at my cards, everyone.
Yeah.
Take a look, and now let's bet." So it's the same thing. It's just playing poker. What are some of the other big do's?
So I would say that you want to involve people that are going to be able to support you, for sure. So you want to have a definite support system, but not people that are going to fan the flames and that sort of thing. So, you know, have a support team around you. Get a really good lawyer who understands narcissism. We talked about that in the last video too. So if you haven't watched that video, you should go check it out.
Get a really good psychologist or therapist who understands narcissism as well. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot stress this one enough. It's not because I'm trying to create business for my field, but this idea of a support system, a lot of the people around you cannot have this conversation. If they've never experienced it, I'm amazed at how many people, my friends even, read my books and they're like, this seems really interesting, but I don't get it. Now it doesn't bother me because it's like, okay, I get that you don't get it. But if I was going through a narcissistic relationship, I would feel very gaslighted and lost. So the beauty of therapy with a therapist who understands narcissism is they get it, and the kinds of support and feedback you'll get from them will not leave you feeling that you've lost your mind, but rather that you feel understood and supported. So I do think you need to choose those, and you have to choose where you have the conversations. Not everyone in your network can hear the conversation.
Yeah, that's
They can't.
definitely
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. Anything else you'd say about that?
So the other thing is to use video for depositions.
Interesting.
You know, a lot of people say, well, that's more expensive. Now we have to pay for a videographer. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you, you're already paying a court reporter. You're already paying your lawyer. You're going through this expense. You know, don't cheap out and not spend an extra couple $100 for the videographer, because what happens with the depositions is the court reporter can only take down, you know, what is your name? My name is, you know, John Adams or whatever. And then it just, so when you see it on the page, it just looks
Very
like
different.
type.
I agree.
But what narcissists will do is they're going to try to rile you up. They're going to try to unnerve you. So they're going to make faces. They're going to make little things under their breath.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to try to do things that upset you.
Yep.
Things that they know are upsetting you. They're going to pass notes to their lawyer so that it makes it look like they're saying something about you, and you're wondering what's going on with that. And so, you know, my normal listeners will know, like I just say, like, they're just less likely to act like a complete jackass if you have, because, you know, that's how they can act, especially the grandiose ones and the malignant ones, right? So using video for deposition can definitely help to rein in their behavior.
Any other do's?
Let me see. I have gather as much supporting documentation on everything as possible. So you're going to want to, you know, do your research. Do your research for your side. So one of the things that I say all the time is, when you're dealing with a narcissist, people tend to be so focused on defending against what that narcissist is doing that they forget to prepare their own case.
That's right. That's interesting.
And you know, it's just like in football. If all you have is a great defense and you have no offense, then you have no case.
Right.
And if your only case is just tearing down the other person, you aren't going to get anything that you want.
So, you know, and here's where it's interesting, because people who have been in narcissistic relationships who may not have already done the reading and gotten the education, they do what anyone would do if they feel they're being attacked or their reality is being doubted. They defend themselves. So after the life history of this relationship, where all they do is defend themselves, it can be often very difficult to turn that switch off.
Right.
And even in the work I do in working with survivors of narcissistic abuse, it's that don't defend yourself part. You have to have nerves of steel when someone is hurling all these bizarre, unfounded accusations at you, to nod at them and say, okay, and then walk away.
Yeah.
And not engage it. You really, I mean, and to me, I tell people, like, you know what? Forget all this meditation breathing. Like, this is your meditation. Like, toughening up and saying, I'm not going to respond to this. It takes more mindfulness. I mean, you could probably bend a spoon with the amount of mindfulness it takes to not defend to someone
Right.
who is going after you. But you know now, after 10, 15, 20, 25 years of defending yourself against this person, it gets you nowhere.
Gets you nowhere. And
It's time to stop.
And how you will feel better. And I actually asked somebody that I worked with in my work on coaching them through dealing with litigation with a narcissist. I said, how did you feel before I started working with you? And this happened to be a guy who was dealing with a narcissist ex-wife, and he said, helpless and abused.
Yep.
And, you know, but what we did was we turned it around by creating a plan, a game plan, a framework, where he was actually going on the offensive.
Great. That's great.
And
I like
that's
that.
and that's something that's almost foreign sometimes to people when they're just so used to defending, that they can actually turn around and take the controls and actually have the narcissist begging them
Right.
to resolve the case.
Right.
It can happen.
Any other thoughts on do's before we turn to the don'ts?
I think that's basically what, because we covered having a strong lawyer, which is really important. We covered being prepared. You know, the only other thing I really want to say about being prepared is don't make the mistake of going into a mediation or a settlement discussion just thinking you're just going to have a conversation. You make sure you have your leverage ready to go. Make sure you are ready to go as if you're going to court, because if you want to incentivize that person to settle and save thousands and thousands of dollars on going to court, if you go to court, you're basically throwing, you know, your future destiny to the judge. And the judge might have a bad day. The judge might see things differently than you do. Judges make mistakes all the time. It's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to go. So it's better if you can settle in mediation or in a settlement discussion, if you can.
Right.
But they're not going to unless you've given them the incentive to do that.
And I'm going to land it on one last do, which, and maybe it's my head as a psychologist, and I've said this, the people on my YouTube friends, I know you're going to say, again, lady, you're going to say this. Realistic expectations, radical acceptance. And the reason I say this as a do is that you almost have to get up with an intention like, okay, I got to keep it real. I know what's coming my way. Because when you do that, and again, the clients I do get to work with, you know, directly in my office, what we find is that we use our therapeutic sessions as a calibration. They're like, yeah, like, I feel like I'm slipping, and I'm like, what did you think was going to happen? And they're like, oh yeah. So it's so easy to want to put expectations about human behavior on this narcissistic person that are realistic. Like a normal person would do this. That's not what you're dealing with. Your expectations have to be skewed to what it is you're dealing with. Like I said, that's what I do with clients. That's, you know, therapists could do, some coaches do. I just, basically you drift back to like, but a normal person, I'm like, that's not what we're dealing with, darling.
Right.
Let's get you right back here.
So expect that they will do all these things.
And so when it happens, you almost chuckle to yourself, even when some of these emails come back. And sometimes I'd even have the clients send me the email and say, you're not, and I'd actually start laughing. I'm like, here we go. And it's like clockwork. I mean, it's literally like clockwork. So that clockwork can be sort of settling to us.
Psychological tricks to win any negotiation. And you know what? Sometimes the first negotiation that you're doing is in the morning when you wake up with your own self, with your own self-worth. You know, I always say I can't even leave my own thoughts unsupervised. Okay, so the very first thing is when you're walking into that room to negotiate, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to walk in with power. I want you to walk in with total confidence, because the first thing that people notice is that with that air of power, because that is the first thing that people feel. You tell people what to think. People will think what you tell them to think before you even open your mouth. Use that body language. All right. You walk in with total confidence, and then you use their name, even like being willing to negotiate their place, all of that sort of thing. And by the way, your colors, the colors that you wear, that can matter too. And I actually have a whole video on just that topic, but that's for another whole video, and you can go and check that out. Clothing colors totally can make a difference. Definitely check out that video on that topic. All right. By the way, you're definitely going to want to stay till the end, because, you know, the end is, of course, I'm going to save the best one for the last. All right. Number 2, know your opponent's weaknesses, of course, because you're going to do your research. You're going to do your research. You're going to do your research for yourself. You're going to figure out what are your arguments. You're going to do that. What people don't think about is doing the arguments, figuring it out what the other side is going to argue. So many people forget about thinking about what the other side is going to argue, as if you are in the other side's shoes. And then this is like so good. This is a psychological trick that is like the best. You ready for it? When you go in, address their arguments before they even have a chance to bring them up. What you're going to do is you're going to say, I know that you're going to say this, that you're going to argue this. And here's my response. Here's why your argument is crap. So now you've already taken the wind out of their sails. That is such a good psychological trick to win against them in any negotiation. Okay. So now you've walked in with confidence. You've used their name. You've said, hi, hello, I'm here. And you've sat down, you've already said, oh, I know what you're about to argue. You're going to say this, and here's why your argument is total crap. Now, what are they going to do? So that's number 1 and 2. Pretty good, right? I still got 4 more to go. Stay with me. Number three is be completely and totally unflappable no matter what. They can say whatever they want to say, and you're just like, because you know what? They are trying to trigger you, especially those narcissists. They want to trigger you. That is what they want to do so bad. So bad. They try so hard to trigger you, and you're just like, So I want you to stay strong. Stay strong. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. Stay strong. You heard what they said, but you're staying strong, right? You're not taking the bait, staying strong. Number 4 is you're reading the other person's emotions and you're mirroring them. That kind of like throws them off their game too. You're like, oh, okay. Like you're kind of empathizing with them. You're like kind of there with them. That's really, really important to kind of like mirror them, because you want to just let them know that you're kind of there with them. You're empathizing with them. You let them know you're feeling them. People want to know that they matter. They want to know, they want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to know that they matter. All people want to feel valued, and no one is walking away, whatever their worst case scenario is. It's not happening. Okay. I mean, both sides are going to have to give a little here. They're going to have to feel like they're feeling seen and heard in this situation. So make sure you're reading their emotions. You kind of barter a little bit with this. Okay. So that's number 4. Number 5 is you use my slay approach. Yes, you want to slay this negotiation. And how you slay the negotiation is you use my slay approach. Strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. You have to have a super strong strategy. You use invincible leverage. You anticipate what the narcissist is going to do and being 2 steps ahead of them. And you focus on you, your case, and your position. right? Strategy. You have a super strong strategy, leverage, invincible leverage, especially with a narcissist. And remember, with a narcissist, you're focusing on their supply. I've got lots and lots of other videos on all that stuff. And you got to get my Slay program to get the good stuff on that, right? And number 6, really good psychological trick is always be ready to walk away. Always be ready to walk, because if you aren't, they know they have you, right? So if you're dealing with a narcissist, be it a covert narcissist, a grandiose narcissist, or a malignant narcissist, they engage in all kinds of behaviors, even while you are just in a relationship with them. They're gaslighting you, they're lying to you, they're manipulating you, perhaps even being abusive. More than likely, they're being abusive. Some are sneakier at it than others. Covert narcissists in particular are very sneaky at it. And so if you are dealing with a covert narcissist, I have several videos on covert narcissists, including why covert narcissists are dangerous and the covert passive aggressive narcissist. And you're going to want to check out those videos for sure if you're dealing with covert narcissists. But whatever kind of narcissist you're dealing with, they are being their narcissist selves the entire time that you're in a relationship with them. So there are 3 phases to a narcissistic relationship. It's love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And remember that the phases of the relationship don't actually happen in a linear fashion. They happen at the same time sometimes. They can be devaluing you while they're love bombing you. And in fact, there was a study done by a psychologist with monkeys that showed that if monkeys were given a reward for doing something good every single time, nothing happened in their brain. But if they were only given a reward intermittently, variably, where the monkeys couldn't predict when they were going to get this reward, the dopamine levels in their brain actually rose to the level of someone on cocaine. And that's what happens with a relationship with narcissists. They go back and forth. The narcissists go back and forth between love bombing and devaluing, and love bombing and devaluing. And so you are left with almost being addicted to, in a physiological way, to wanting their praise, to wanting that love bomb, because they start out so charming and they really try to set themselves up to be the perfect person for you and hold out all these things that they're going to do for you, or even do things for you right at that time. I mean, if you ever watched the Dirty John miniseries, you recall that guy was just setting himself to be up to be perfect for this successful single businesswoman. He was getting her dry cleaning and making smoothies for her in the morning and all these things at the same time that he was isolating her from her family and turning people against her. So they go through these phases of the relationship. So what happens when you are doing battle with a narcissist is they just become that same person, but on steroids. So it's so much worse. They turn up the heat because, unfortunately, for narcissists, you're either for them or you're against them. They need an endless amount of supply. And if you are cutting off that supply to them, then they just see you as the enemy. And for those of you who watch my videos on a regular basis, you know that I've had to work 2 covert narcissists out of my life, and it was not an easy thing. It wasn't husbands, but it was people that were close to me and close enough to do serious damage and cause lots and lots of trauma. And, I'm telling you that if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Narcissists have a symbiotic relationship with empaths. And, narcissists see that empaths have the qualities that they want. And empaths, we just think that we can love everybody back to health, and, that we have enough love to give. And it just ends up being this black hole. And so they literally, they're often called energy vampires or leeches or parasites or whatever, but they literally suck the life out of you. And it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. And so when you go to do battle with a narcissist, they're literally turning up the heat, because now you're the enemy. Now you no longer have any value for them. So there's no, like, a reasonable person, those of us who are in reasonable land, we think, oh, we can just walk away and wish each other well, and we'll come up with an agreement that's reasonable. And hey, the law provides for certain things, and depending on what kind of battle you're doing with a narcissist. But you can't, that's not how it goes with a narcissist. So if you're getting ready to do battle, or you're in the trenches of doing battle with a narcissist, there are a few things that you can do to beat them at their own game and preserve your own sanity along the way. The first thing is, don't allow them to disrespect you. When you allow them to disrespect you, you're basically giving them permission to do that. And they know how to push your buttons, let me tell you. I mean, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship with this person, they've studied you, they know exactly what your weaknesses are, and so that's where they're going to go. They're going right there to try to make you look as bad as possible. Everything you say or do is going to be turned against you, used against you, twisted, manipulated. So what you're going to have to do is just maintain your own level of dignity, maintain your own level of respect, and demand respect from them. If they are screaming, yelling, trying to talk to you in a way that's overly emotional, and they're not in control, they want you to be out of control too, because they get supply, they get narcissistic supply by seeing you squirm. So by just maintaining that, hey, we're not going to have this conversation, you're not being respectful to me, this is not productive, we'll have this conversation when you can be respectful to me. Same thing if they are lighting you up in text messages or lighting you up in emails, and saying all sorts of disrespectful things. You can just simply respond and say, I disagree with what you're saying. Please do not speak to me that way. It is disrespectful. And then respond to the parts of it that you might have to respond to, like, what time are you picking up the kids, or something like that. But other than that, you're not going to get into the trenches with them and sling that same sort of mud. You're going to demand respect from them, and you're going to condition them that this is how it's going to go. If they want you to interact with them, they're going to have to respect you, and it's going to drive them insane when you do that, believe me. Okay, the next thing that you can do is document. And we cannot say this enough, those of us who are in this field and professionals in this area. You just never know what's going to end up being your leverage. And when you're dealing with narcissists, you have to have a super strong strategy, and you have to be able to create leverage. And, I often hear people ask me, what is leverage? What does that look like? And leverage can be a smoking gun, like the one thing that for sure the narcissist doesn't want anyone to know. Or it can be something like that the narcissist is more motivated to resolve your differences than you are. Or it can be an accumulation of things. It can be, 15 different text messages that show that they're a liar. Or and you create an exhibit that shows that. It could be that they didn't show up for picking up the kids on time 20 times in a row, or they changed the schedule every single time that they were supposed to take the kids, or whatever. But it could be any accumulation of those things. And so it's really, really important to do that documentation, even if it seems mundane. Just keep the app open on your, on your phone, the Notes app, or there's apps where you can actually they pay, to have a documentation feature or whatever. But basically, you just don't really know what's going to be the pattern that you're going to be able to bring out, or what's going to be that leverage. And, for sure, the leverage is always going to be around what is their biggest motivation, which is, the one thing they don't want to come out. It's going to be around their ego, because the thing about narcissists is, they're just always in this mode of self-preservation. They're actually very easy to figure out. And narcissists are the most afraid, most scared little personalities on the planet. They have fragile egos because they have no sense of inner value. All of their value comes from the external. So when you are looking at your documentation and figuring out what your leverage is, you're going to want to think about what is their biggest motivation. What is it that they really don't want brought out? And what is it that's going to make them look bad? Because narcissists do not want to look bad, especially in front of people that they really respect. So if somebody is involved that they really respect, such as a mediator or other lawyers or the judge, especially the judge, they're not going to want to look bad. So document everything. Okay. You never know when you're going to need it. If this is all sounding really good to you so far, and you are so ready to start doing the things that I'm telling you to do, give me an amen in the comments. Okay, the third thing that you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with and understand what behaviors each one engages in. So some of it is similar. All narcissists engage in certain types of behaviors like gaslighting and manipulation, but they do it in subtly different ways depending on the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, whether it's covert, malignant, or grandiose. And you will want to brush up on the different types of narcissists so that you can figure out what kind you're dealing with, and then find out what behaviors they engage in. And once you do that, then you will expect it. You're going to go, oh, there's that person being that covert narky self. That's what they do. And you won't take it as personally, because you'll just understand that that's the way they act. Okay, so the third thing you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with, brush up on the types of behaviors associated with each narcissist, and then expect them to act like themselves. They don't change. Narcissists do not change. They can pretend like they know, they're very good at pretending. They do know what good behavior looks like. That's how they were able to rope you in the first place, and that's how they parade around the world and get people to think that they're so great. Especially covert narcissists are really, really good at that. But you're going to want to figure out what kind you're dealing with, and then not be surprised when they just act like themselves. Okay, the fourth thing is when you are getting ready to ask for something from the narcissist, you're going to want to ask for way more than what you actually want. The narcissist is going to want to feel like they beat you, like they got to you, because they get supply from that. Their egos won't allow you to win, at least on paper. So if you are ready to just give them a certain amount, give away a certain amount that you control, that you decide ahead of time, I'm going to be willing to take this much, or I'll be willing to give up this thing. But act like it's like the one thing you definitely don't want to give up. Because if there's something that's super important to you, then that's the one thing that they're going to want to make sure that you don't get. So you're kind of playing a game here, and I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. But basically, you're going to want to give them certain things that you kind of decide ahead of time that you were willing to give, and then um, work back to what you actually want. And then when you get there, you have to act like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to give up so much, and this is just awful, and oh, you really took advantage of me and whatever. But you can just go home and smile and pour your champagne or whatever, and do it in the privacy of your own home after you've won the things that you wanted. And number 5, the last one is, I take it from like this old commercial, never let them see you sweat, but really you never want to let them see you sweat, cry, get emotional, lose control. Then they get supply from that. If you need to, cry in the bathroom, and then come back out, splash water on your face. If you wear makeup and you're a female, whatever, put makeup back on. If you're a guy, just splash water in your face, comb your hair, whatever you need to do to just maintain control, and never let them see that they are getting under your skin, because as soon as they see that, then they know they have you. If you know you're going to have to interact with them, and let's say it's a school meeting or it's a mediation or something like that, don't get there too early, get there on time. Don't give them opportunities to grab you and try to manipulate you, because that's when they'll start to get under your skin again. Remember what I said at the beginning, these narcissists, they know how to push your buttons. So never let them see you sweat. Okay, so things have turned red hot. You are under massive attack. They're triggering you because that's what they want to do. They want to make sure that you're triggered. They want to destabilize you. They want you to feel paralyzed. They want you to feel powerless. That's their goal. It's not just, by the way, it's not just because they want to win. Yes, they want to win, but there's kind of like this other piece of it, because if they win, then it's over. And they don't necessarily want it to be over, because then the fun is over for them. Because part of the fun is the intimidation factor. Part of the fun is watching you squirm. Part of the fun is like, it's kind of like that nasty kid who just like takes the earthworm and like wants to pick at it and watch it kind of squirm, put pins in it and see what happens to it. Like that's kind of the fun of it for them. It's almost like an experiment. They enjoy it. So how do you look fearless when they're like enjoying that? So I've come up with this acronym. It's called Cool Words, and it's to help you remember what to do when they are trying to stick it to you. Because a lot of times, by the way, they know you, especially if it's in a divorce situation or a business partner dissolution or something where they've really gotten to know you well over the course of many years. They know what your Achilles heels are. They know how to get to you. They know exactly what is going to needle you. So, cool words. C. C stands for chill out, take a break. First thing you can do is just walk away. Say, I need a moment. I need to walk outside. I need to take a breath. Go throw some cold water on your face. Go to the restroom. Take some fresh air in. Just get away from the intensity of the room. Just doing that for a few minutes will make a huge difference. You have the right to just walk away for a second, change it up a little bit, especially if there's a mediator. If you happen to be in a mediation setting, maybe even say, I want to talk to just the mediator for a second, or maybe have just the lawyers talk, or maybe ask to have a different dynamic as far as who's talking to whom. Even just that can kind of cool the temperatures down in the room for a second. Okay, so that's C. That's the first C. The next letter is O for cool words. All right. So O. O stands for observe their behavior. You're just observing their behavior verbally to them, without emotion and without judgment. So you say to them something like this: I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. You might even ask them, what's making you angry right now? Get them to verbalize it. So you're just observing. You're observing their behavior to them. You're just kind of taking yourself out of it by doing that. And you're asking them to explain their behavior to you without emotion, without defensiveness, without judgment. You're not getting down into it with them by doing that. So that's the first O. The second O, we're working through the word cool here. The second O is observing the situation as if you're a bystander. So the first O is you're observing their behavior to them. The second O is you're observing the situation as if you're a bystander. So this is where you're actually taking yourself out of the entire situation as if you're not even part of it. It's almost like watching a 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor. They're screaming, they're yelling. You don't feel like you need to get down on the floor and scream and yell, right? You usually just watch them. This is almost helpful, like as if you're watching a football game, or you're watching a wrestling match, or you're a hockey game and you're seeing like those guys, like they start fighting, right? Because it helps you to start to not take things as personally. Because remember, the way people treat other people is always a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves. Highly recommend the book, The 4 Agreements. One of the 4 agreements that you make with yourself is you never take anything personally, because the way people treat other people is always a reflection of the way they feel about themselves. Observing the situation as if you're a bystander is something actually that Judge Lynn Toller also recommended when I interviewed her, and you can definitely check out my interview with her on this channel as well. And we'll make sure we have a link to that here as well. So definitely check that out. The next letter is L. We're working through the word cool. So we've done COO. Now we're doing L. L is let it go by you. You're just literally watching the words that they fling toward you just go by you. I just think of it as like when I was a kid and I used to play dodgeball. Like they would make us, not willingly, by the way. Hated that game. But when they would make us play that game in PE, they called it PE, and they forced us to line up against the wall. Do they still make kids play that game? Horrible game. They force you to line up against the wall, and the boys would fling the ball at you as hard as possible. And you would like try to dodge the ball. Anyway, so you just kind of like watch the words go by you just like that. Like you just go past them. The words go by you, and there they go. And you're just observing them go by you, and they don't touch you. And that's what you're going to have them do. You're just letting them go by you. That's L. All right. And then words. This is my favorite part of this. You use mantras, words, power words to keep you grounded. And so what you do is you actually have power words in front of you. So they could be words like power, strength, leverage, resilience, confidence, or control, whatever it is. And you just have 1 or 2 of them right in front of you just to remind you of who you are, what you're doing there. And you don't even have to have the whole word written out. You can just write P for power, something that's going to keep you grounded, keep you feeling strong. It could be just a symbol, something that when you look at it, it's going to remind you of that word. In the book, Think and Grow Rich, which I also recommend, Napoleon Hill talks about that power of auto-suggestion, which is a way for you to reprogram your brain and your neuronal patterns. And so by having these words there, something that is in the room with you when you're in that situation, that high emotion, that tense and intensive situation, it's a way for you to remind yourself who you are, and you're going to be less likely to be triggered that way. It's reminding you that you're a badass. You're a badass. And that badass self of yours is going to stay in that room, and it ain't going to go anywhere when you're under attack, so that you can remain looking fearless. How to negotiate with a narcissist, which, usually is like, you don't even know how to do that, right? And, you end up having this fear, sweaty palms, your heart's racing, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get what I want from this person because they're just completely unreasonable, right? Which is, a lot of the case sometimes, but there are ways to get people to do what you want. Part of the thing is that you have to start thinking about how you're going to create some leverage, because what leverage is really in a negotiation is to incentivize the other side to give you what you want, or at least give in to some of the things that they don't want, or that they think they want, and then, give them incentive to figure out how you're going to get what you want, right? So that creating leverage is figuring out what the other side really wants, what's important to them, what means the most to them, and then figuring out a way to give that to them in a certain sense, but also incentivize them to give you what you want. Because when you're figuring out your best case scenario and your worst case scenario, remember that your best case scenario is their worst case scenario usually, and vice versa. And nobody's going to give in to their worst case scenario. Who's ever going to do that, right? So the trick is to come up with what it is that you really want, and then add a lot of stuff to that. So you come up with, I want this, I want that, but you decide ahead of time what it is that you're going to be willing to give up. And so then you come out with your first offer out of the gate. It has way more in it that you actually want, but you're going to be willing to give in. You're sort of controlling the process. You're kind of trying to control how much you're going to be able to give up, which you've decided ahead of time what that's going to be. Okay. And then once you let them feel like they've beaten you, then you just do your best Meryl Streep and you go, okay, I guess this is terrible. Oh my God, I can't believe I had to give in all this, but I did. So, and then the other person thinks that they've robbed you and they've gotten it all over you, which is fine, because if you end up with what you want, then who cares, right? Where you really get stuck is when you get into this game of, I have to beat the other person. I can't let them show me up, because you'll never win in that game with a narcissist. They're willing to scorch the earth to get what they want. So the trick is really deciding ahead of time what it is that you're going to give in on, and then let them think that they beat you, even though you actually got what you want. Okay, so let's dive in. The name of this easy foolproof method is the BIFF method, and you may have heard of it before. It is pioneered by the great Bill Eddy, and I have actually interviewed him before, and I will go ahead and post a link to that interview below as well, so that you can check that out if you want to. But very briefly, BIFF, B-I-F-F, stands for brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Step number 1 is B, which stands for brief. You're going to want to keep your interactions with that narcissist brief, because their number 1 goal is to manipulate you, to use you for whatever they can, so that they come out looking as good as possible. You only exist really to benefit them. They don't care about you. Whether you're dealing with an overt narcissist or a covert narcissist or whatever kind of narcissist you're dealing with, you want to be careful about getting sucked in to their patterns, because as soon they want to suck you in. So for example, they'll give you like 3 choices. All right, here's 3 choices to settle our case or to resolve our issues, whatever it is. And then you come back and you pick one, and they go, oh no, it's now changed. Because the end goal is not to actually come to a resolution. The end goal is to manipulate you. So don't get sucked into that. You have to keep your interactions as brief as possible. Okay, so that's step number one. B stands for brief. Is this sounding familiar to you all so far? If so, put a hell yes in the comments. All right, ready? Number two. Two stands for I. I stands for informative. So yes, you can be informative. You can tell them things. You will want to be able to interact with them in a way that is just, here's the facts, here's the data, here's the supporting data. Because one of the things that a narcissist will constantly try to do is twist what you say. Twist your words, twist what you say. They're always going to want to make sure that they come out winning and on top. So gaslighting is one of the things that they'll use. So, you know, we had that conversation. You don't remember that? Oh, you agreed to blah, blah, blah. Oh, you misunderstood, blah, blah, blah. Right? So the more facts and the more information that you can have to back up your position, the harder it will be for them to manipulate you. So they're still going to try. Don't get me wrong. They will definitely still try. But just I stands for informative. You just give them the information and then it's like in and out, sort of like the soup Nazi. I'll have this kind of soup, boom, onto the side. So you just give them the information and then you're out of there. And by the way, part of also being informative is that you're going to want to document everything that you say or do with this person. Everything should be in writing because they will try to twist your words. Okay, so as much as you can, you want to keep everything in writing. Especially if you're dealing with children, you're going to want to have some kind of a app that you're using that tracks your conversations, because this person will definitely constantly try to manipulate what you're saying. And by the way, if you are negotiating with the narcissist, I have a special video that I made just on how to negotiate with the narcissist, and I will drop a link to that below, so you're going to definitely want to check that one out too. Okay, number three, the third step is F, and F stands for friendly, and that's because even though you despise them and you probably hate their guts, believe me, I have my own narcissist in my life that I have to deal with. Everybody does. We all do, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a partner, whether it's a family member, it doesn't really matter. But you probably have a narcissist that you're having to deal with in your life, right? So the thing is that they want you to be upset. They're trying to manipulate you into getting emotional. And if they're a covert narcissist, that's even more their thing. And what they're trying to do then is make you look like you're crazy. So, and regular narcissists do that too. So you want to just remain friendly, because then they think you're unflappable, totally nonplussed. And whatever you're doing, I'm watching you. I'm watching you like I'm watching a 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor. I'm not getting engaged with that. Okay, so you stay friendly, because as soon as you lose control of your emotions, then they know they have you. Okay, so F stands for friendly, the first F. All right, second F and last F. This is step number 4. The last F stands for firm, and you've got to remain firm. One of the things that narcissists do is they push boundaries. They don't think they have boundaries, and they also have this mantra going on inside of them: I will not be ignored. So they're going to push boundaries. They're going to want to push your buttons. You've got to remain firm and not allow them to do that. All right. So brief, informative, friendly, firm, in and out, get out of there, don't engage. And that's how you're going to beat them at their own game. All right, so let's talk about, you're in the room, you're actually negotiating. You've done your research, you've done what you were supposed to do. And by the way, if you don't know where to start and you're like trying to figure out where to even start, you are certainly welcome to grab my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet at winmynegotiation.com. That's a really great place to start. A lot of people have actually just won their entire negotiations just on that. But now you're like, okay, I'm in the room, and how can I tell if they're actually bluffing, or maybe it's not even in the room. You're just in the process of negotiating with them. You're having discussions. They've talked a game, but you're not sure, are they serious? And you want to know if they're serious, but you can't really tell. I mean, one of the things that you need to know is that most of the time, they probably are bluffing. And the reason why is that they don't really want to settle, even if they say they do. And even if they say they want to save money on attorney's fees, and even if they say they want to come to a resolution, and even if they accuse you of being the one who's dragging out the process, because most of the time they're always accusing you of the things that they're actually doing. You know how that goes. But they say all of these things. They actually enjoy making you squirm. They enjoy the process of intimidating you and controlling the process and seeing everybody like be their minions. So they're not actually trying to get to a resolution of the case or the negotiation or whatever the issue is a lot of the time. A lot of time, I think it may even be subconscious. I'm not 100% sure. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes I think it is conscious. Sometimes I think it's subconscious. But anyway, they do enjoy yanking you around and seeing you squirm. All right, so let's talk about the 4 ways that you can tell that they're actually bluffing. So number 4, we're going to work backwards to the best one. Okay, so number 4 is lots of puffery, lots of bravado, lots of grandiose pronouncements, bragging about how great their offer is. This is the best offer ever. You'll never get a better offer better than this. This is the deal for you. You really need to take this. They love to brag. This is especially the grandiose narcissists, by the way. The coverts don't tend to do this as much, but the grandiose ones for sure love to do this. And especially to other people. I've offered them this great deal. I can't believe they haven't taken it. I've given them everything in this deal. The world, I'm taking nothing for myself. They'll talk in these absolutes. You're getting everything. I'm getting nothing. Everyone else thinks that you should take this deal. No one else thinks that this is a horrible deal. You know, they love to talk in those absolutes. If you want to know more about how narcissists talk and the types of phrases that they use, you can definitely check out my video on narcissists' favorite phrases for sure. But anyway, that's definitely one of the little cues that you might see that might give away that they're probably bluffing. That's number 4. Number three is actually vague phrases. So they'll throw around sort of vague phrases, illusory offers. You know, you'll get lots of this. We'll make sure you're taken care of. We'll be sure that it's something that you'll be happy with, not details. For sure, at the end of the day, it will be a good deal for you, something like that, but it'll be something that's kind of hard to pin down. I mean, and it might even be something like, yeah, it'll happen by the end of the year, or it'll definitely happen, you know, within a few months. And then a few months goes by and you say, hey, how come, you know, it hasn't happened within a few months? And then they say, no, I said that within a few months we would do something else. And they kind of change what they said. You know, they're really famous for that sort of thing. And you know, it's always vague and sort of shifting. It's kind of hard to pin down. So that's number 3, vague phrases. Number 2 is they throw around offers that are a little bit more specific, but they do it at a time when you definitely can't memorialize it. So they'll say, oh, I agree that you can have X, Y, and Z, but they'll do it at a time when you're standing in a parking lot, or they'll do it at a time when you're, driving away in your car, or that you're getting on an airplane or something like that, where, nobody can actually memorialize it. And then by the time you get to a place where you can actually maybe write it down or something like that, they'll say, no, that's not what I said. No, you misheard me. You were taking that out of context or something like that. So they'll say it at the time just to assuage you, just to get you to go away, just to get you to not be right in their face about something. And you think, oh, good, we finally have a deal. We've gotten them to agree to something, but now by the time you get them to a place where they can actually memorialize it, they actually get the details in writing, then that deal has gone away. And if you think, by the way, that they're super scammers and you're agreeing with me on this so far, give me an agree in the comments below. So these are all definitely signs that they are bluffing. And number one is my favorite. I see this all the time, and I see a lot of attorneys make this mistake as well. Well, what I see attorneys fall prey to is they constantly move the goalposts. So what attorneys will end up doing is they'll send a settlement proposal over thinking that, the other side will agree to something, and then the other side maybe agrees to some of it, and the other side comes back, and it ends up being super costly, very time consuming. And then even if the other side agrees to parts of it, the other side comes back, they don't agree to parts of it. And then what ends up happening is that the narcissist will only hold the other side to account for the parts that they like, but they won't hold themselves to account for the parts that they don't like. And you never end up with a deal at all. It ends up being a very protracted, very expensive conversation that goes absolutely nowhere and delights no one except for the narcissist, because everybody gets jerked around in the process, and the narcissist just sits back and delights in the whole thing because I got to screw everybody around. So basically what you're doing when you hand over a settlement proposal is you're going, here's a way to jerk me around. Here you go. So you don't want to do that when you are dealing with a narcissist. Certainly not. There are other ways that you can get them to settle. That is not the way. If you follow me at all, you know that you need to create strategy. You need to have leverage first. You got to start squeezing them and motivating them and surrounding them first, and then you can eventually get them to settle. You got to play a little bit of a long game. You got to be a lot more strategic than that. You've got to learn to ethically manipulate the manipulator before you can do that. There's definitely ways you can do it. Don't think that you can't. You can definitely negotiate with narcissists. There are ways, but just not the ways that you think that you can. Okay?
You're getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist. You should never, ever, ever negotiate with a narcissist without these things. So number one is a powerful, powerful, powerful mindset. Remember that you and you alone define your value. You are inherently valuable. And there's different ways to define value, by the way. So, value can be anything from how you feel inside to the value that you bring to the table as far as money or leverage or anything like that. But you define your value. You and you alone define your value. And one thing I really want you to understand is that people will think what you tell them to think. And you want to make sure that you are communicating to these people that you are powerful, that you are the one who's in control. Okay, so that's number one, is make sure that you have a powerful, powerful mindset. The second thing that you should never, ever, ever even think about negotiating without is having all of your arguments ready to go, having your research done, having your leverage ready to go. If you don't have all of your arguments ready and your research done, and research on your side, by the way, and also researching as if you are the other person, because you want to make sure that you are anticipating what it is that they are going to say. So you do your research on your side, and then you also do your risk assessment. You need to make sure, is this an argument I really want to make? Or how much research do I really need to do, and how much money do I want to spend researching? In other words, a lot of times people think that narcissists are hiding assets or hiding money, and a lot of times they do. And if you want to know more about how narcissists hide money or assets, check out my video on what kinds of financial tricks narcissists play, especially in divorce. I have a whole video on that. But they a lot of times do hide money, or maybe are hiding income, or maybe they're paid in cash or something like that. So you need to kind of do some risk assessment on that by saying, okay, do I want to hire a forensic accountant? Do I want to hire somebody who can maybe find assets for me? There's guys out there that I know that can find assets even in other countries. But, sometimes they're expensive sometimes. And sometimes, you have to think about, how much money do I want to spend? How much money do I really think is out there? You don't want to spend a few thousand to get back a few thousand. If you're going to spend a few thousand, you want to get back, 50 grand or 100 grand, right? So do your risk assessment and making sure that you are prepared. So that's the next thing. And the next thing is never, ever, ever negotiate without being ready to anticipate the types of emotional triggers that you're going to have. So if you're really, really feeling powerless, and you're really, really feeling like the other person is going to have the upper hand on you, then you want to make sure that you are going to be ready for that. And definitely check out my video too on negotiating with someone when you think that they're more powerful than you, because I offer lots and lots more tips on that, and just making sure that you come across super, super powerful. So you want to have all of your arguments ready to go. So when I want to see in the comments right now that you are going to be ready by saying ready in the comments. The next thing that you want to have ready before you even walk into that room is what your first offer is going to be, and also what your choke point is going to be. You want to make sure that you have your walk away point, because when you get into that room, you are definitely going to be triggered, especially when you're dealing with the narcissist, because they want to take you down. That's their goal. They don't want to settle this. Remember, they're getting narcissistic supply from making you squirm and making you miserable. That's why they constantly move goalposts. And you should definitely check out my video on why narcissists move goalposts too. But they don't want to come to an agreement. They like making you squirm. So you will definitely be triggered. So before you even walk into the room, one of the most important things you have is knowing what your best offer is and what your last offer is going to be. What's your choke point? What's your walk away point? I actually had a client one time who said, they called it their vomit point. Like, that's the part, that's the point at which I throw up and walk away. But whatever you want to call it, what's your bottom line? What's the point at which you go, this is it. I'm not negotiating anymore. And it's so important that you come up with all of these things before you walk into the room, because that day will be an emotional day. All right, so never, ever, ever negotiate without being fully prepared, knowing what your first offer is going to be, knowing what your walkaway point is going to be, and then sticking to that.
So let's talk about sneaky secrets that you can use in any negotiation, but especially against narcissists. And what I say is, if you can negotiate against narcissists, you can negotiate against anyone. The bottom line is, when you're negotiating, all people want to feel like they've come away with some value. The thing is, no one's going to settle for their worst day. All people want to feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. And that's why my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, is called Negotiate Like You Matter. And matter is actually the acronym for my methodology in that book. And M stands for my value is defined by me, because you and you alone define your value. And value can be internal or external, meaning that you have internal value, which is whole and complete and fixed. We are all valuable as human beings. And then there's the external value, which is kind of defined by the market and all that sort of thing, based on your skills and how much experience you have and all that sort of thing. But as human beings, we are all intrinsically valuable. But there are certain sneaky negotiation secrets that we can use to kind of win any negotiation based on just how you approach a negotiation, so that everybody feels like they're getting somewhere. Because if you want to get somewhere, you want to make sure that everybody is being acknowledged. So just thinking of it from that perspective, and especially when you're dealing with narcissists, because remember, they don't have any internal sense of value. They don't have that internal feeling that they have. They're trying to constantly layer it from the external. So you got to think about that as well. All right. So number one is start with areas where you might agree, and then work toward those more contested areas, the ones that are more hotly contested. And the reason why you do that is because that way you feel like you've got some common ground. That way you feel like you're building some momentum, like you're getting somewhere. Okay, we've already agreed on these things. Look, burn the bridge already. Why throw the whole thing away? Look at how much we've already gained. A lot of times, like, it's, oh, wow, we've already agreed on 99% of everything. It's just these last couple of things, why blow the whole deal on just these last couple of things? So you pretty much can like wrap it up because you've agreed on most everything else. So you start with areas of agreement, then you work up toward the more hotly contested areas. Okay, because that way you feel like you've gained a lot of ground, right? So that's number one. Number two is you let the other person start with the first offer. Sometimes that's a way of letting them feel like they've got some control, especially when you're dealing with narcissists, where you're dealing with somebody who is a more toxic or more volatile personality. It gives them some feeling like they got somewhere right out of the gate. And a lot of times, actually, it helps you because you get to see where they're coming from. You get to see what's most important to them. So you get to see where their cards are. It educates you. Honestly, it helps you. So let the other person start with the first offer. So that's number two. Let the other person start with the first offer. Let them have some control right out of the gate. That's number two. Number three is start with a whole lot more than you actually want. Now, this is kind of a tricky one, though, because you also don't want to start with so much more that the other person goes, I'm out of here. That's ridiculous. If it's so offensive that the other person just thinks they're just wasting my time and they just are out of there, then you've totally blown the deal. So you have to be careful about how much a lot more is. I mean, obviously you want to ask for more than what you want, especially because sometimes people really do have to be beat up by the process. I think this is tough for people sometimes. They think, well, I'm just going to be reasonable right out of the gate. I just want to be done with this thing. let me just show them that I'm being reasonable. Let me just show them that I'm giving up all this. And if I give up all of this right away, they're going to see how much I'm giving up. They're going to see how reasonable I am. And a lot of times, if you're dealing with a narcissist, they just take, and that just gets taken, and they don't acknowledge that, and they just want, to keep going with that. And that just gets shoved to the side and not even acknowledged at all. And you end up feeling frustrated and taken advantage of. I would just be very, very careful about that. I do have another whole video on psychological tricks to win any negotiation, especially against narcissists. And I would definitely check out my video on that. Number 4 is throw them off the scent of what you actually want. And especially with narcissists, because if you tell them what you actually want, they will definitely go directly for that. And especially just to get back at you. And again, check out my video on the psychological tricks to win any negotiation. So be careful about that. The bottom line is sometimes you just have to take your ego out of it, because they do just want to get back at you. And the thing is, you just want to get to a resolution. You just want to get to yes. If you are a reasonable person, narcissists just want to jerk you around. They don't necessarily want to just get to yes. They just want to continue to manipulate you and see you squirm. If you're a reasonable person, you just want to get to yes. You just want to get this thing done. You just want to get to where you want to go. You just want to get to your goal. Winning is the goal, right? Or get to your wherever it is you want to go, so that you can move on with your life, right? So you want to get to yes. And if you agree with me, put yes in the comments right now. Okay. And the last thing is mirror their emotional body language so that they feel seen, heard, and valued. If they're feeling warm and they're kind of on the table and down like this and listening to you, you can do that too. If they're back like this and up and this way, you can do that too. Because when you kind of act the same way as somebody else and talking sort of similar to somebody else, they can feel that. They can psychologically feel that. And people want to be with people that are like them. And they feel more comfortable with people that are like them. And so when you're mirroring people's emotions and their body language, then they subliminally and psychologically feel more comfortable, and they actually start to feel more like, oh, I feel like we're in agreement. I feel comfortable with this person, and they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel acknowledged, they feel valued, and they feel more comfortable in coming to a resolution and agreement with you, which is what it is that you want. And remember, of course, if you do come to an agreement, to get it in writing, some kind of a writing, some kind of way of documenting that deal. Super, super important. So that's what I got for you. Sneaky negotiation secrets that you can use to win any negotiation. Okay, so let's talk about how to look confident as hell in any situation. And by the way, why would you not want to be confident in any situation? Because showing up as being confident gets you absolutely everywhere. And I'll tell you something, my dad, who was actually Chinese, and he came over here when he was 15 years old from China. He worked his way up. They had nothing. He actually ended up going to Columbia Medical School. He became a doctor. And he used to say, whatever you say it with authority and people will believe you. And I now have listened to Tony Robbins and people like that. And Tony has said, like, whoever speaks more confidently, that's the person who gets what they want in a conversation. So true. You have to say things with authority. You have to show up as confident. And, I've now seen motivational speakers talk about how confidence is a habit, which is definitely true. I talk about how I never leave my thoughts unsupervised, because you have to constantly be working on being that confident version of yourself, because it's not always easy. People are always there to try to knock you off your game, including yourself. I say that negotiation is something that you're always working on. And sometimes the first negotiation that you're doing is with your own self-worth. So almost all of it is right here. But the person who shows up the most confident in a negotiation is often the one who gets what they want. And people will think what you tell them to think. So it is really, really important for you to show up as the most confident version of yourself. 99% of winning a negotiation is you, your mindset, and how you show up. So this is almost one of the most important videos to watch when it comes to winning a negotiation. Okay, so number 5 is clothing choice. And clothing choice, I love, because there's all kinds of psychology around wearing things that make you feel powerful, wearing things that make you feel like $1,000,000. You know how you feel when you put on that power suit or that power dress, whatever it is that makes you feel like, really good, that makes you feel beautiful, that makes you feel amazing, whatever it is that makes you feel like the Adonis or that power suit, right? For the guys. So wear something that makes you show up feeling powerful. Okay, that's number 5. Number 4 is color choice. Many, months ago when I first started doing YouTube, I actually did a whole video on clothing color and psychology. Super old, but you can definitely go take that video out if you'd like. But, there's actually a whole psychology around what color to wear. So color choice is something that you can figure out as well. But, red can sometimes mean danger. Black is definitely powerful, but blue is a color of trust. Green is a color of trust. Those are good colors. Yellow can sometimes mean weakness. White usually means like a good thing sometimes too, so you can definitely figure out what colors to wear as well. Number 3, power poses. Reading other people's body language, looking at your own body language, but power poses, being open, having your arm draped out across the chair. Sometimes this can be a good power pose. Sometimes it can look like you're closed, but sometimes it could be a good power pose. Steepling can look powerful. So I have a whole video on reading narcissist body language, by the way, which you can definitely check that out as well. Number 2, word choices. Be very careful about the choice of words that you use. Don't say, I'm sorry, or you don't have to, or, that's weak ass language. Get that out of your languaging. I'm okay if you don't, or I'm sorry, or be very, very careful about using weak ass language. You got to think to yourself, I'm unstoppable. I remember hearing Tony Robbins, I think it was, talk about how when he was first starting and really like pumping himself up, he used to go running and he would like the whole entire time that he was running, he'd like say to himself, I'm fucking unstoppable. I'm fucking unstoppable the whole entire time. And by the time he was done running, he would like just that was like burned in his brain. So I want you guys to write in the comments right now, I'm unstoppable. I want you to just start thinking that and start burning that in your brain right now. I'm unstoppable. Okay. That's your mantra for today. I'm unstoppable. All right. So that's number 2. And number 1, what do you think number 1 is? What do you think I think number 1 is? I kind of gave you a clue at the beginning of this video. Number 1 is definitely your mindset. I know I fight with it too sometimes. We all do. That's why I never leave my thoughts unsupervised, because you have to, remember that your input equals your output. So what does that mean for me? What does that mean for you? It means when I'm by myself, when I'm driving in my car, when I'm brushing my teeth, getting ready in the morning, when I'm making dinner, walking my dog, whatever, I'm listening to something that's going to be good for my input so that my output is good. I'm listening to an audio book. I'm listening to a YouTube video. I'm listening to whatever it needs to be so that I am constantly training my thoughts. I'm constantly keeping my energy level where it needs to be. I'm really, really, really attuned to vibrational energy. And I'm really, really attuned to who gets to be in my space, who gets to be around me. No narcissists in my zone anymore. Already had that. I had to deal with one as a business partner that really super sucked, and had to get that person out. I have a friend who says no icky people under the tent. Yeah, I defend my light with my life. Your mindset is super important. You have to keep your vibrational energy super high. That's what's going to help you look confident as hell in negotiations and any time in your life. Confidence is a habit. It is something you have to work on at all times, and you have to remember and you have to remind yourself that you are unstoppable. You're getting ready to go into a negotiation. You're wondering, what should you say? What should you not say? What should you definitely stay away from? And believe me, there are certain phrases that you definitely do not want to say. So number one is, I'm giving this an hour, or I'm giving this 30 minutes and then I'm out of here. So you don't want to start off with like you're giving us some time frame that puts everybody on edge right away. And now everybody thinks they need to hurry up or whatever. That's definitely a narcissist move, by the way. I've seen narcissists do that a lot. Where they come in and they start throwing around like, I'm only staying this long, or I'm only staying that long, and that's it, and then I'm out of here. Because they want everybody to be on edge right away. They want everybody to be like scurrying and scrambling and trying to hurry up to try to get things done. And they want to try to control the process. They want people to be afraid, nervous about what's going to happen or whatever. So it is definitely not something that's highly recommended, especially when you want to resolve your issues. And especially if you are dealing with a narcissist, because that's not going to help them. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help them want to work with you. Okay, so don't start off with, I'm only staying for X amount of time. That will definitely put somebody on edge. So, the purpose of these phrases and this video today is to let you know what kinds of things you want to stay away from saying, because you want to try to actually get something done. If you actually want to get somewhere with your negotiation, then you want to try to avoid using these phrases. Okay? So another one that you definitely want to stay away from is something like, this is my final offer. Take it or leave it. This is it. Especially if you're early on in the process. Now, if you're down the road, y'all have been sitting there for hours and hours and hours, and you've already been back and forth. You already know what your choke point is. You've done your risk assessment. By the way, if you want to know all the things that I'm talking about, grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep worksheet at winmynegotiation.com. That will help you do all of these things. But you've already figured out what your best case scenario is, what your worst case scenario is, what your choke point is, what your walk away point is, those are the same. And you've gone, okay, now this is my final offer, fine. But you don't walk in and start off at the beginning going, this is the deal, take it or leave it. If you don't take it, I'm out of here. Because that's not going to, nobody's taking that. I mean, even if it's a deal that you want, just imagine that it's presented to you in that way. You're going to go, oh, no, because, you're kind of acting like a jackass, right? So you don't want to do that. So if you want something to actually be done, you actually want something to be considered, where you can actually maybe
get some, ground in this thing and gain something out of it, then you don't start off with, here's the deal, take it or leave it, right? And if you are so ready to get this done, give me a get this done in the comments below. Okay, so the next word that you never want to say straight up in a negotiation is no, because that's not going to help either. When you're dealing with a narcissist, especially, they hate the word no. And by the way, you should also check out my video on words narcissists hate. And definitely no is one of them, even if it is a no. I mean, you might want to just say, I'll consider it. What's your reasoning for this offer? It's always good to know what their reasoning is behind the offer. Why is it that they're offering this? Get them to talk a little bit, because one of the things that is really important to know is that even if you don't settle in mediation or in the negotiation or in arbitration or whatever it is that you're in that particular conversation and you don't have a resolution, it's a great way to get information. It's a great information gathering time. So get them to tell you more about it. Why is it that you think that this is a good deal? Why is it that you think that I should take this? What supporting documentation do you have? What arguments are you going to be using down the road if we don't settle this now? Why do you think that it would be a good deal for me? And why is it a good deal for you? Why is it that you want this deal? Ask more questions rather than just say no straight up off the bat. Because if you just say no, you're just going to piss them off. You're going to annoy them. They're going to get up. They're going to walk away. And then you've lost the opportunity, even if your answer is straight up no, to get more information and gather more documentation that you could potentially use. And by the way, if they start giving you all of their arguments and all of their documentation, then the next time you go to sit down for a conversation, you know exactly how to refute that. You know exactly what research you need to do so that you can be prepared for whatever the next meeting is, if there is going to be one. So don't just say no straight up off the bat for a number of reasons. One being that you're not going to get anywhere with that. And second, you're actually losing an opportunity for yourself to gain more information. The next one is never use any kind of a devaluation or any kind of a slur, or even using any kind of tone where you're like, yeah, I know that this is what you want, but you're not getting it, or that's ridiculous and that's never going to happen. That's actually another good phrase never to use, which is that's never going to happen, because that's, again, you don't want to put people in a situation where they're immediately put off, where they immediately are just like, why am I having this conversation? Let me just get up. Let me just leave right now. You want to hold them there. You want them to have a conversation with you. And so the longer that you can be in conversation with each other, the more rapport that you can build. And so in building a rapport, you definitely don't want to be slurring the people. Certainly don't use any kind of racial slurs, any kind of gender slurs, anything against religion, or anything about the person as a human being. You really never want to get personal when it comes to negotiating. You don't want to say, something about, like your mom is an alcoholic, or something like, Eddie Murphy with the ice cream man thing. You don't want to say things like that, right? Clearly that's way off topic and way so far afield, and will just inflame the situation and cause the person to go, well, I'm never having any kind of conversation with you. And maybe you're fine with that, obviously you want to know before you go into the room where your parameters are and what your walk away point is. But if you're in conversation with this person, then that means that you do want something from them. And you have to remember that all people want to feel seen, heard, and valued. All people want to know that they matter in some way. And that's why My book is called Negotiate Like You Matter. And the acronym, it Matter is actually the acronym for how to negotiate, because all people want to feel that they matter. Now, obviously, if you're dealing with a narcissist, it's like heightened by a gazillion, because they have to be the focal point, and they really want to know that they matter. But you always need to make sure that you're providing value for value. Nobody's going to settle for their worst day. Remember, your best day is probably the other side's worst day, and nobody's going to have a conversation when it means that they're settling for their worst possible scenario. So, deciding ahead of time what it is that you're going to give up will really be helpful. Now, when you're dealing with a narcissist, you might kind of like use a decoy and act like the thing that you're giving up is the thing you really wanted, when it's really something you were going to be willing to give up in the first place. You kind of have to ethically manipulate the manipulator a little bit. And if you want to know more about that, check out my video on manipulating the narcissist, because that's something you definitely have to do when you are dealing with a narcissist. The point of all of this is you don't want to use any kind of language that's going to cause the person to immediately go, that's it, I'm just out of here. I'm not having this conversation, because you're putting them on edge right away. I mean, even when you go to tackle the issues, one of the T's in my Matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, is tackle hard issues second, meaning start with areas where you might agree and then work toward the more contested issues, because then you're building a rapport. You're building a situation where you feel like the momentum is going. You're actually covering ground. You're making headway. And so any kind of languaging that is going to make the other person feel like they've been insulted, like they're being controlled, like they're not being respected, like they're not being heard, that they don't feel valued, is not going to be helpful to the resolution process. And if resolution and coming to an agreement is what it is that you want, then staying away from those particular words will help you, and it will go a long way.
So how do you create leverage over narcissists? So first of all, let's talk about what a narcissist is. A narcissist is a person that has no inner sense of value and has to get all of their value from the external world through what we call a concept of narcissistic supply. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, definitely check out my video on that topic. And this person also has no sense of care or compassion for other people. So no problem stepping on people, no problem, collateral damage, getting people stepping on them on the way up and hurting them to get where they want to go. So, or using people for their own gain, that sort of thing. So that's what a narcissist is. Okay. So now, in the workplace, you're going to find them in all different areas, because they estimate that at least 1 in 10 people has narcissistic traits or lacks the ability to have empathy, or actually is a narcissist. I've actually heard statistics recently that it's actually as high as 16%. So there's a huge number of people that have these traits, unfortunately. So you will encounter them in the workplace, and you will encounter them when you are negotiating with them as well, either as potential clients or vendors or buyers or sellers. It could be your boss, it could be an employee, it could be a coworker, a colleague. Really, it doesn't matter, but it can help. It can slow down your career. You can actually lose deals. So if you can learn how to negotiate with these people from a place of strength, from a position of confidence, from a position of power, then it will actually increase your bottom line, increase your performance. You will close more deals, and your life will be a heck of a lot more peaceful. So let's talk about now the basics of negotiating in general. So I wrote a book called Negotiate Like You Matter. Matter is the acronym for how to negotiate. And the reason I call it that is because, yes, all people want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. But narcissists are that on steroids. They want to make sure that the only person who feels like they matter, they don't care about you. So the acronym is MATTER, and the first letter is M, and that stands for my value is defined by me. All people want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. You are the one that has to define how you matter. You are the one that has to define how you show up, what people think of you. People will think what you tell them to think. It's one of the best lessons I've ever learned. So you have to demonstrate that by demonstrating your confidence, your abilities, and the value that you bring to the negotiations. Narcissists will respect you a hell of a lot more if you are strong. And that is one way you can definitely get leverage over them. The next thing is A, and A stands for anticipate the arguments, analyze your research, and that's how you also start to create leverage. T stands for tackling hard issues second, meaning start with the areas that you might agree and then work toward the more contested areas. By having some sort of rapport, it will definitely help you. Especially with narcissists. You can't just go right in and say, hey, you're a narcissist and you can't have anything. You will never get anywhere with that. So if you want to start to create more leverage over them, get them to trust you a little bit. Okay. And if you want to know more about that, you should definitely check out some of my interviews that I've done, like with John DeMartini and Bob Proctor. They have great, great advice on all of that. So, and if you know that narcissists have the biggest ego of all people on the planet and the ones that feel like they have to matter the most in the room, give me a totally in the comments. Okay, so the next T stands for dressing to a T, meaning feel confident, wear colors that make you feel more confident. I have a whole video on clothing color psychology and negotiations. You can definitely check that out. But wear things that make you feel like $1,000,000, that make you feel powerful. Really, really important. E stands for keeping the emotion out of it. So, so important. I have a video with Judge Lynn Toller where she talks about how to keep the emotions out of it, how to just sort of start looking at the negotiation almost as a game or almost as like a third party observer. Really, really great advice. And the next letter is R, which stands for record agreements in writing. That's another great way to have leverage over narcissists, is to make sure you hold them to their word. And remember that the best leverage over narcissists has to do with narcissistic supply, because supply is what they feed off of. Supply is their food, their lifeblood, their oxygen. And so they have what I call diamond level supply, which is anything that makes them look good, how they look to the world, that people respect them, that they're adulated, that people think that they're amazing and wonderful. That's diamond level supply. What I call coal level supply, or the supply that just kind of burns and gives them energy, but it's not like the best, is the supply that they get from jerking you around and making you miserable, especially in negotiations. So the best leverage is one that threatens a source of diamond level supply and makes them think that they have to protect that. And so therefore letting you go is going to be more attractive than continuing to get supply out of you by making you miserable. So I have a whole lot more on this in my free webinar, which is called Create Leverage Over Narcissists in Business, with my 3-step magic bullet formula. So I have actually a 3-step magic bullet formula that I outline for you in a longer form, in a webinar form. It's totally free. I would love to have you come join me on it. The link is below, so just sign up, come spend the time with me. I'll be there live out answering your questions as well. And we can have a whole discussion about the kinds of things that you're actually dealing with. So come join me on my free live webinar. I would love to see you there. If you're paralyzed in negotiation conversations and you're just not sure what to say, maybe you're afraid of rejection, I have a simple 6-step foolproof method that will allow you to feel confident and powerful when you go into your negotiations. I've proven this method with thousands of clients, and now it's your turn to be in on the secrets. In order to win, both sides need to feel seen, heard, and feel like they matter. So your acronym is MATTER. You want to negotiate like you matter. MATTER. M stands for my value. My value is defined by me. The negotiation process is an inside-out process, meaning you start with the internal parts of yourself, and then you work outward toward preparation for that big day or that big conversation. So I always say that 80% of the negotiation happens before you even walk into the room. You start internally. Your value is defined by you. And I wanted to make sure that you understand that there is a difference between your internal value, which is whole and complete and inherent and infinite, and your external value, which I'll get into a little bit more in step 2. But just for now, remember that step 1 is my value is defined by me. Or as I like to say, you and you alone define your value. And remember that people will think what you tell them to think. So you need to communicate to them that you are valuable. Who out there wants to feel like I matter? Please put I matter in the comments so that I can see that and acknowledge you. Step 2 is A, which is analyze your research and create your arguments and your leverage. This is the next layer out. So remember, the first layer is your internal value. The second layer out is now you're going to build your external value. So this is going to be where you do your research, you create your arguments, you look at ways to create leverage. You're going to start figuring out what the other side's pain points are, what's going to motivate them, what is it that is going to get them to want to come to the table and have a conversation with you. And this is especially important to determine what the other side's arguments are going to be, because you're going to want to be ready to either speak to them or refute them, especially if the person is a narcissist, and that's a whole special category of their own. And if you are going to be dealing with somebody who is a narcissist, or you are dealing with someone who's a narcissist, I would encourage you to watch my other video, which I specifically spoke to how to deal with a narcissist, and I'll go ahead and put the link to that below the video here. But step 2 is analyze your research and create your arguments and your leverage. That's what the A is. Next up, step 3, which is the T. Step 3 is T. Remember, we're using the word matter as an acronym, so M-A-T. T stands for dress to a T, and then use powerful body language and words. Your clothes, the things that you wear, actually has a psychological impact on your brain. There's scientific proof that if you wear clothes that make you feel like $1,000,000, that you will feel more confident and more powerful. So make sure you put on that power suit, or you wear that power dress, or whatever it is that makes you feel amazing, because that's going to be important. The other thing is colors. So you want to wear certain colors that will communicate psychological message to the other person. If you want me to do a specific video just on colors, go ahead and drop a comment below and say colors, or colors please, something like that, so I know. Then you are going to want to use powerful body language and powerful words. And I can do some separate videos on those as well. But you want to make sure that you're doing things like a chin grab or a steepling, things like that, that make you feel, that you make you look and seem more powerful. And you also want to read the other person's body language and make sure that you're reading it correctly as well. So step number 3 was T, dress to a T, and use powerful body language and words. We are halfway there. The next thing is step 4. And step 4 is the next T, which is tackle the hard issues second. Or the other way that I like to put it is start with areas that you might agree on, and then work toward the more contested issues. because you want to build momentum. You want to build a feeling of trust. You want the other person to start feeling like you value them. And I say this, even if you hate the other person's guts, even if you despise them and you detest every hair on their head, if you are having a conversation with them, then obviously there's something that you want from the other person. So if you want to get what you want, then you've got to acknowledge the other side and make them feel like they matter. So you're going to start with areas where you might agree, so you feel like you get that momentum going. And by the way, this is where you might pull out your leverage, because once you create that leverage, you want to use it at the very specific time that it's going to be optimum for you. And so here is where you may want to pull out what your leverage is. If, by the way, you are specifically going through a divorce and you're watching this video, I do have a different video just specifically on how to create leverage in divorce. And I will drop a link to that below as well. So make sure you check that out if that's your situation. So just remember that the second T in MATTER stands for tackle the hard issues second. Next up is step 5. Step 5 is E. Keep your emotions in check. That's what E stands for. You're going to want to maintain control. It doesn't mean that you can't be passionate about your positions or your arguments, but by doing the work of the MATT coming before you, which means you've done your research, you've created your value internally, externally, you've done your preparations, you're going to be ready and your emotions will stay much more in check. The only reason why they go skidding out of control is when you feel like you're not really sure what it is that you're talking about, or that the other side isn't acknowledging you. But if you know your internal value, you don't have to worry about that as much. So E is keep your emotions in check. And we made it. Step 6. The last step is your R in matter, and R stands for, drumroll please, record your agreements in writing. This doesn't mean it has to be a formal contract, no signing in blood or anything like that. It could just be a follow-up text or email that says, hey, thanks for speaking with me, and here's what we agreed upon, or here's what we discussed. That way you eliminate any misunderstandings right away. So negotiate like you matter, MATTER. I have a special gift for you. It's your little negotiation cheat sheet, so that you can remember each one of these steps in MATTER, and it's free, and it's in the link below. I'm dropping a link below.